Let's celebrate Judge Bev's recent gag order by reminding everybody who originally put out biased information. And not only did he put out that biased information, he put out that biased information from an official position. So all that being said, everything's alleged. Welcome to the point. Let's get to it.
This will be the first statement of its kind in my dozen years as Norfolk District Attorney.
It's the first statement in years of this kind because most district attorneys had more sense to not do this type of crap. In fact, when this stuff came up in a pretrial hearing before the first trial, Judge Bev had to be thinking, what on God's earth were you thinking? You're the district attorney. You can't get out there and say this type of stuff. But it gets wilder, so everybody listen.
The harassment of witnesses in the prosecution of Katen Read is absolutely baseless.
Alleged harassment.
It should be an outrage to any decent person, and it needs to stop. Innuendo is not evidence. False narratives are not evidence. However, what evidence does show is that John O'Keefe never entered the home at 34 Fairview Road in Canton the night he... Location data from his phone, recovered from the lawn beneath his body when he was transported to the hospital, shows that this phone did not enter that home. 11 people have given statements that they did not see John O'Keefe enter the home at 34 Fairview that night. 0 people.
And 11 people also changed their eyewitness testimony multiple times. I'm not saying this implements them in some type of massive conspiracy. I'm saying I didn't view the vast majority of these eyewitnesses to be credible. You can't change a story multiple times and still be believable. At least they weren't believable to me.
Have said that they saw him enter the home. 0.
0 people also saw him laying outside of the front yard.
No one. Some have, without any evidence, pointed to 18-year-old Colin Albert, a nephew of the homeowner, and accused him of attacking John O'Keefe as he entered the home. But phone evidence shows O'Keefe never entered the home at all. Testimony from witnesses tell us that 18-year-old Colin Albert had left his uncle's home before John O'Keefe and Katen Read had arrived outside the residence. There was no fight inside that home. John O'Keefe did not enter the home.
So is it out of the realm of possible, given that we know all the evidence from the first trial, that John O'Keefe may not have entered the home, but he got in a fight in the front yard? Maybe he got in a fight in the front yard with another individual who was exchanging text messages with Katen Read. That's just speculation, and if you disagree, you can let me know down in the comments below.
Colin Albert, the young man being vilified, was not present when Read's vehicle and John O'Keefe arrived on the street. This is a false narrative. Colin Albert didn't commit. Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, and Brian Albert. These people were not part of a conspiracy and certainly did not commit or any crime that night. They have been forthcoming with authority, providing statements, and have not engaged in any cover-up.
And they've also been getting rid of their phones and removing flooring and getting rid of the dog. I mean, they've been doing a lot of things. Hindsight's 20/20, of course, and this is in a lot of ways Monday morning quarterback. But there's a whole lot of irony between what is said right here and what came out in the actual trial.
They are not suspects in any crime. They are merely witnesses in the case. To have them accused of murder is outrageous. To have them harassed and intimidated based on false narratives and accusations is wrong. They are witnesses doing what our justice system asks of them. The autopsy of John O'Keefe was conducted by a forensic pathologist from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. The doctor found that the injuries that left John helpless in the cold were not a result of a fight. She further found that the line of abrasions on his arm was consistent with blunt trauma, not an animal attack.
Which contradicts the ARCA experts, who came out and point blank said there is no way a car did that to John O'Keefe. And I just gotta be honest once again. I'm gonna side with the individuals who had the PhDs in physics. I'm gonna side with the science, not the medical examiner. Now, did John O'Keefe get attacked by a dog? I'm not sure. I wasn't 100% convinced of that in the first trial. But I also couldn't say it was completely ridiculous, especially given the fact that the dog was given away, or rehomed, a lot like the cell phones.
A grand jury of everyday citizens heard the documented evidence and testimony before making a decision. The subject of that indictment enjoys the constitutional presumption of innocence. Why should the witnesses who have committed no crime be afforded less by members of the community? They should not be harassed for telling the government what they heard or saw. I'm asking the Canton community and everyone who feels invested in this case to hear all the actual evidence at trial before assigning guilt to people who have done nothing wrong.
And people heard all the evidence, but you're speaking with such absolution as if there was going to be a ton of evidence at this trial. What evidence they did have had chain of custody issues, inverted videos, solo cups, and leaf blowers. I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
And certainly before taking it upon yourself to harass citizens who evidence shows have done nothing in this matter but come forward and bear witness. We try people in the court and not on the internet for a reason. The internet has no rules of evidence.
Neither does Norfolk.
The internet has no punishment for perjury.
Neither does Norfolk.
And the internet does not know all the facts.
And neither does Norfolk, MSP, or you, because the science doesn't lie. Karen Read did not hit that man with her SUV. The vast majority of the evidence that was potentially there got probably blown away when y'all decided to use a leaf blower. Or maybe when y'all used unsanitized solo cups to gather evidence. I mean, I'm just saying, maybe you could have done things a little bit different.
Conspiracy theories are not evidence. The idea that multiple police department, EMTs, fire personnel, the medical examiner, and prosecuting agencies are joined in or taken in by a vast conspiracy should be seen for what it is. Completely contrary to the evidence and a desperate attempt to reassign guilt.
I think you botched the investigation.
Michael Proctor, the state police trooper, being accused of planting evidence outside 34 Fairview Road, was never at Fairview Road on the day of the incident. Proctor and his state police partner traveled together the entire day while other officers were processing 34 Fairview. Trooper Proctor was not there and did not plant evidence at 34 Fairview Road. In addition to having no opportunity to plant the evidence, as has been suggested, Proctor would have no motive to do so. Trooper Proctor had no close personal relationship with any of the parties involved in the investigation.
Then why did they say they were glad he got the case and they were going to go buy him something after this investigation was over? They had a close enough relationship with Michael Proctor to feel comfortable he was the lead investigator. They knew who he was. Once again, this was all stuff that came out in the trial and wasn't necessarily widely known at this particular moment in time.
And had no conflict. And he had no reason to step out of this investigation. Every suggestion to the contrary is a lie. This should be seen for what it is and not used as a pretext to attack and harass others. What is happening to the witnesses, some with no actual involvement in the case, is wrong.
So was your investigation.
It's contrary to the American values of fairness and the constitutional value of a fair trial.
So let's talk about the fair trial since you want to be the one to bring it up there, Mr. District Attorney. Why is it now we're still several years after the initial incident, we're still getting video evidence of the Sally porting around Canton PD? Why was it originally said Michael Proctor never went near that vehicle, but then there's surveillance footage showing him near that vehicle? Why was it Brian Higgins was on the stand saying he didn't use his phone that night, but then surveillance footage shows him on that phone while he was at Canton PD? I mean, if we're going to talk about a fair trial, let's talk about it fairly. I didn't necessarily 100% disagree with Judge Bev's ruling when she said Betterow couldn't be on Karen Read's defense team. I kind of get what she's saying. But if we're talking about fairness, let's talk about fairness. The state's new dog bite expert has absolutely no experience. He's not a medical doctor. I know you don't have to be a medical doctor, but he doesn't know anything about bite analysis or at the level the defense team's expert has. He certainly probably has more experience than me, but his experience reads more like he's just a frequent pet owner and he's had dogs a long time. So I guess anybody who owns pets can now be an expert on a jury trial. A lot like a Google search is now a valid thing in a court of law thanks to Delphi. I mean, there are double standards here, and those double standards and hypocrisy rulings need to be called out. Let's have this fair trial. Let's let the ARCA experts come in. Let's let everybody know that the defense paid them after the fact. Let's let everybody know that the FBI hired them originally and they did an investigation and their report is their report. The defense had nothing to do with them forming that report. And yes, the defense paid them, but they paid them afterwards. I mean, let's just let it all out there. Let's let it be fair. But don't talk about fairness with your mouth and have your hands doing something else. That's just how I see it. I'm not a professional. This is all alleged. And if you disagree, you can let me know down in the comments below.
It needs to stop now. I am releasing this recorded statement rather than holding a news conference because my remarks need to be so narrowly tailored to the issue at hand while the prosecution is pending in Superior Court. But the message is the same. What is happening to these innocent people, these witnesses, is wrong and it needs to stop.
A lot like what you just said, it needs to stop. But yet the defense is the reason for the gag order, as if they're the cause of all the issues. These public statements on both sides have been going on for the longest time. For Hank Brennan to get up there and say that the defense is the sole reason for people like me to make videos about them is absolutely 100% ridiculous. You will not find a video about this trial until after the verdict was read. I went into this trial believing Katen Read was probably guilty of the crime she was charged with, but I wanted to see what the evidence said. And what I found was they spent loads of time talking about the weather. The eyewitness testimony was very uncredible, and there was poor evidence gathering at the crime scene. And you can't say Canton PD is not the crime scene when this guy right here went up there and said Canton PD was the crime scene. So the state is trying to speak out of both sides of their mouth here. But now there's this gag order. We've had all these crazy rulings very recently. Some I kind of agree with, some I absolutely don't. But in some of her rulings, Judge Bev really doesn't hide her bias. And every little thing the defense does is a major issue. When the state does something like this, it's no big deal. When the defense raises a hand saying, hey, this happened to us, why isn't something happening to them? She says, well, this is a new trial, so there's no bias. Well, guess what, Judge Bev? There's a new trial. There's no bias in terms of the defense paying these individuals from ARCA. At least that's just my take. Now, if you see any of these things differently, you can let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this and a more fair, open conversation, maybe check one of these videos out. Y'all be safe now.